I don't necessarily like to do a whole bunch of preparation for a video. I just have to have the inclination to want to do it, and I don't really prepare a script or prepare even thumbnails. I do save thumbnails or screenshot thumbnails for potential videos and I'm doing on a particular thing or boxer. But anyways, let's get into this. It's a career review on the former undefeated super middleweight and light heavyweight champion Joe Calzaghe from Newbridge, Wales. So I'm going to go, and what I forgot to do with the previous opponents was go over their amateur careers. Now Floyd and Muhammad Ali, I don't know too much about their actual amateur backgrounds, but because Joe Calzaghe is from the United Kingdom, it is a little easier for me to access amateur careers. So here I am going to show there's only 5 fights on this, so this is probably his senior international bouts, or his senior bouts anyway. So I saw this fight, which was against Trevor French, and I believe he was at welterweight at the time, and even then you could tell that this guy was a force to be reckoned with. That he had great hand speed and combination punching even back then when he was 18, 19, something like that. So I've watched this, and this was an ABA championship fight. Now he had another ABA championship, and I'm guessing it's one of these ones. I think it's Craig Winter, if my memory serves me correct. So that was actually in Wales. And I'm not sure of the amateur system, what RSC means. Maybe it's whenever they stop the guy for overwhelming his opponent. So Joe Calzaghe didn't actually go to the Olympic Games or anything. He did have international bouts, I believe, before 1990, and there is a famous boxer who knew him from the amateurs, a famous boxer who I don't know him personally, but he said that he boxed not Joe himself but alongside him, and was at Havana, Cuba in 1988. So let's get on to Joe's career here. And as I said, I'm not the most prepared, so this is going to be a little bit off the cuff. So excuse me if it's a little off the cuff, but I will do this anyway. Chris Eubank. Now, Joe Calzaghe was basically not particularly well known at this time, and Chris Eubank was definitely on the way out of a tough career with lots of actually anticlimactic boring fights, but a lot of tough fights too, where he nearly lost to the postman from Belfast. No, it wasn't a postman, but the guy from Belfast. Was it Ray Close or something? He'd lost, as you see here. He had the 2 losses to Steve Collins at the time, and then he had the draw to Nigel Benn, and I'm not sure what the other draw actually is. I believe it was more of an obscure fight, but Chris Eubank he might have done some kind of a promotional deal with Frank Warren, so Frank Warren puts him in against Calzaghe, and Calzaghe really shines. Now I don't know why this is only 4-star and not a 5-star matchup. If it's going by the matchup, it should have been 5-star. But anyways, Joe Calzaghe drops Chris Eubank in the first round, I believe, or the second round. The first round, and what Chris said in interviews was that Calzaghe really, put him on his backside, hurt him quite badly, and he said that the hand speed was good and the accuracy was good from Calzaghe. And let's see any other interesting details. Oh, so Eubank barely won a round. Okay, Calzaghe is 5'11" in this. I thought Calzaghe was 6'1", and their reach is the same actually. So there, Calzaghe was actually 22-0 at the time, with 21 knockouts. Wow, that is excellent. I hate whenever I'm recording my screen and the ads always pop up. So I thought Chris was coming straight off this Steve Collins loss, but I was wrong. And he actually had fights in between the Steve Collins fights, because when I looked on other websites, I believe it just comes up the 2 Collins fights and then the Calzaghe fights, because it comes up as 3 defeats in a row. And as we see here, Calzaghe's running through these guys basically. Look, 5 was it? I can't count. 6 stoppages in a row. And Chris there is about 4 out of his last 6. So let me get back to the main page. So that was really Joe Calzaghe's coming out fight. Was that fight? The Robin Reed fight. The Robin Reed fight is a bit controversial, and I watched the Robin Reed fight, I think was it earlier of this year, and I did think it was close too, but I thought Joe actually gave a good account of himself, and he boxed well, he was versatile, and Joe's style. Joe actually reminds me of a little bit of Vasyl Lomachenko. He doesn't quite have as much diverse moves, but his adaptability and everything is like Vasyl Lomachenko. So yeah, he only got the split decision, but I'm assuming, yeah, he maybe, okay, so he lost one on the scorecards. That's definitely too wide, in my opinion. 116, 111. But it is what it is. Robin Reed lost to Sugar Boy Malenga, and he had wins over guys like Henry Wharton, who was actually the postman, I think. Or Henry Thornton, that was, I think, the super middleweight. I'm getting mixed up here a bit. And you see Calzaghe here, he's got like his Chris Eubank win at this point. So all's good. So people weren't necessarily very impressed with Calzaghe, because they thought that Robin Reed defeated Calzaghe. And they thought, Calzaghe's maybe a hype job. So some time passes and he's busy here. He's consistently, well, he's only had 2 fights in 99, but in 2000 he's had 3 fights there, all back to back. He's pretty consistent getting out, and he stops. Now I don't understand these star ratings. Is it the performance itself, or is it how good the matchup is? Because I swear this is more than a 3-star matchup. Richie Woodhall was an Olympian. He fought Roy Jones at the Olympics. Established amateur in Britain. This was in Sheffield, which I'm not sure if Woodhall's from there, but Calzaghe stops him. And that's really a pretty remarkable, stopping Richie Woodhall, who was a pretty decent professional. I think he was a world champion as a professional too. But in order to stop him, when you're not considered a big puncher, that really is something. So he stopped him, what, in a knife? Yeah. Oh, the 10th. So that has to be said. And you know, Calzaghe starting to get some nice names at Robin Reed, Richie himself, and Eubank. Now the Byron Mitchell fight, I might be getting it confused with some other fight. Yes, I'm getting it confused with some other fight because there was an opponent with a similar name, and I'll probably remember it when it comes up. But it was quite a flat performance. Was this the one where he blew through him like quite easily? I think it was. See, I need to. I have watched this fight. I'm nearly certain I have. It's just that I can't remember the names as well. Anyways, just before I get on to that, anyone remember the one where he went to the distance and he was actually quite criticised about his performance, and he was criticised, I think, by the commentators. And okay, Mario Veit, good record, 45-1. Jeff Lacey. Now Jeff Lacey was a live underdog. You know, as far as odds, Jeff Lacey gave a lot of talk about what he was going to do to Joe Calzaghe, and he was going to knock Joe Calzaghe out. All the rest of it. This was Joe's first unification. He had quite a few title defenses. He was a champion for 9 years at this time. So this guy's been a world champion at super middleweight for 9 years. That's pretty impressive. So this is one of Joe Calzaghe's bigger blockbuster fights, and it was the MEN Arena in Manchester. This is going to make Joe Calzaghe the more of the sensation that he went on to become in the United Kingdom, and this was really go time. So Jeff Lacey was a real big, powerfully built guy, real athletic looking guy, and he gave Joe a lot of trash talk, and he said that he was going to, beat Joe easily and stuff. Well, little did it turn out to be Joe beat him easily, boxed his ears off, and that's one of Joe's best performances. And when Joe just really lets his hands go in boxes, he really produces some great performances. And from here to the end of his career, you do see him get some of these blockbuster fights and some of these performances. Because before, although he had beat good guys, he really wasn't maybe sure of himself, or he hadn't quite got a lot of the Hall of Famer names. So that's what he went on to do. Sakio Bika was another good performance. Sakio Bika is definitely a tough challenger. He's a strong guy. He's not a guy you can easily knock over. Sakio Bika was performing into his 40s and doing good. And Andre Ward later went on to fight Sakio Bika. So, real tough guy. Peter Manfredo, that was a walkover job. I think it was the 3rd round. Kessler, possibly my favourite Froch fight. Pretty competitive. Kessler was doing some good stuff in the front foot. Joe had to keep himself extra busy, and he was nearly too busy in the first round or two, just trying to keep the wins in the bag, because Kessler was applying some nice pressure, and Kessler was undefeated at this time too. So that was really probably the best name on the resume as of yet, because Kessler was in his prime, and Kessler actually gave Froch. Well, he beat Froch, but even in the second fight, Froch didn't beat Kessler as convincingly as Joe Calzaghe did. And this is where the comparisons, I do think that Joe was better. Right, we're actually at the end of Joe's career already, and these were his dream opponents, and he said that he had to beat them in order to retire. He moved away from his natural weight division of 168. He was basically an undisputed champion or unified champion. Didn't have the ABF. Although I'm pretty sure he won it from, he won it from Jeff Lacey, so he vacated it after Bika. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting, but I didn't actually know that. But beats Kessler in a real hell of a good performance, and he fights the two sort of Hall of Fame veteran names. And yeah, this was it. These were his two last fights in the last year of his career. The Hopkins fight was very close. Hopkins gave Joe all he can handle. He dropped Joe in the first round with a sneaky right hand, and Bernard was on the back foot, and Joe was rushing in, maybe a little too quickly. Kept his head on the centre line. Bernard Hopkins swipes in a right hand. It's quite a short right hand. It doesn't travel too far. Hits him clean in the chin. Joe isn't too hurt by it. He gets up. He's still got his legs beneath him, and he still rallies away. And this rallying style of fighting is really what makes him win these rounds and win these points. And it was a tough fight throughout, I thought, but and Hopkins was still doing good form, even though he was 43 years old at the time. Joe was 36, so it's not like he was in his prime either, but Joe was closer to his prime probably than Bernard Hopkins was. But Bernard Hopkins really used his old man tactics to try and outcraft Calzaghe, but Calzaghe just appeared too good and kept his undefeated streak. Then Roy Jones, well, he was really toying with Roy Jones. Let's be honest, it wasn't really a competitive fight. He got dropped again in the first round. Now this time it was not really a punch, but it was because of the way the action was going. If you watch the replay, Roy Jones kind of catches his wrist on Joe's face, and Joe goes down. But apart from that, Roy Jones gets cut. Joe does to Roy Jones what Roy Jones used to do to people. Put his hands behind his back, toy with people, do bolo punches. I mean, it wasn't a competitive fight. He's probably the best Britain had to offer. One of the best. In my opinion, he's better than Nassim Hamid from how good he is. So he's better in terms of his achievements because there was more names there, and apart from the Robin Reed fight, it wasn't really up for dispute if he beat those guys. I don't think he's as good as what Lennox Lewis was, who I'll probably do next actually. But he's probably top 3 or top, second best. I would still have Lennox Lewis as number 1 because Lennox really beat virtually everyone who was to beat, with the exception of maybe Michael Moore and George Foreman and Riddick Bowe. George Foreman was old anyway, but it would have been nice. But Joe Calzaghe, he beat Eubank, he beat Jeff Lacey, and he beat Mikhail Kessler. Went on to defeat the two guys who he was scalping after was Roy Jones and Hopkins. So it's a remarkable career, and he's kind of underrated, I think, by British standards, because not a lot of people will discuss Joe Calzaghe when they're talking about the super middleweights. They'll talk about Eubank and Ben, and they'll talk nowadays to more modern fans. They talk about Froch. Froch was a warrior. Froch was a warrior. But don't forget about this guy who was on paper and we tangibly saw was better than Froch. Maybe he wasn't in wars like Froch was, but it's not like he was exactly. I don't know. I thought it was entertaining to watch because of the hand speed. He'll get out of trouble quite well, and even doing some little things in the pocket. He showed some versatility there, and he was able to adapt to his own game plan, but he's able to change it up mid fight if he had to. And maybe if he was 4 or 5 years older and was in the Eubank Ben era, maybe he would be more revered if he beat Eubank younger and defeated Ben and Steve Collins and all the rest. And Steve Collins wouldn't actually fight Joe. I'm not actually didn't actually look into that as to whose fault it was, but you have to imagine that I would have beat Steve Collins quite easily. But remarkable career, and it's the same problem that the 90s super middleweights had. Was the problem was they weren't fighting the guys from the United States. He did go on to fight the guys from the United States, even the Hall of Famers, but maybe sooner. I think as a Brit, as someone from the UK, you have to go to the United States, really, because they usually have the best in certain weight divisions, like light heavyweight, for example. They're usually from the United States, the best light heavyweights. But nowadays they're actually from Russia. Russia, middleweight and light heavyweight and cruiserweight are being dominated these days by Eastern Europe, it seems, because Eastern Europeans are great fundamentally and have great amateur careers. Anyway, that's enough. I do appreciate this Joe Calzaghe. He's doing good bits of BT in that, and I appreciate that because there's nobody more qualified to talk about tactics and game plans as far as upcoming fights than this guy, because he really has seen it and done it. He's been in tough situations. He's been on the ground before. He's had to fight strong guys that won't give in, and he's had to come up with game plans on the fly or switch game plans, and that's ultimately why he became the best. And he was the best. He was the best super middleweight in the world for my money. Didn't quite become the best light heavyweight. He didn't really fight Chad Dawson in that, but his time was up. But I would like to see other people actually do a career or a review in Calzaghe's career. I'd be interested to find out about it. Anyway, cheers.